I have 14 points that I'd like to start with, and I have not shared them with you, although we have been doing plenty of talking about what's been transpiring, obviously.
So please tell me this is a 14-point plan to get us out of the trouble.
It is not. No. It is not. But there are 14 points here, and I'm going to share them, and then we'll talk about them. Okay. All of these things I believe to be true. All of them can be, and I believe are true. 1. Systemic racism has a long history throughout the world, and the legacy of slavery in the U.S. is a particularly salient example. 2, in the U.S., we were making progress against racism, both at the societal and individual level. We weren't there. We were not post-race, but we were making progress. The legacy of the civil rights era meant that it was ever more shameful and embarrassing to be publicly racist, and therefore more difficult to be privately so as well. We were making progress until the last several years when a perfect storm arrived. Just 2 of the parts of that perfect storm are these. 1, by the early to mid-2010s, everyone was carrying a camera in their pocket in the form of a smartphone. Video footage of acts of police brutality brought that violence into everyone's living room. There was now no denying it. The flip side of this is that the visceral anecdote will always be more powerful than the dispassionate statistic. So long as any grotesque incidents exist, and grotesque incidents will always exist, so long as any exist, even if police and policing improve dramatically, it will now be even more difficult to point to the hopefulness of the second truth. And the second of many parts of the perfect storm, which have eroded the advances of the civil rights movement, are the ascendancy of woke culture and intersectional thinking and critical theory. They showed up first in higher ed, spread into schools of ed, from there into K-12 schools, into cubicles, journalism, media, the arts, and beyond. This thinking holds, among other things, that we have original sin based on the color of our skin, and that there's no escaping it. Point 3, Black Lives Matter. Point 4, the organization that has come to be known as Black Lives Matter does not seem to be the upstanding, honorable organization that its tagline would suggest. 5, emotion is high. The reaction to George Floyd's brutal and senseless killing was and is emotional, and that is not actually inherently a bad thing. Reason and considered analysis are not the only ways to communicate in the world. Showing raw emotion is sharp and intense and harsh and hard to look away from, and therefore it can be powerful when other modes may not be working. But, 6, the months of lockdown, which Brett and I have and continue to argue were, and in some cases, may continue to be necessary for public health, made people less emotionally resilient than they had been before, and more fragile. Furthermore, I believe that seeing people in so-called red states party over Memorial Day weekend without social distancing may have contributed to the raw emotional outpouring by some blue state protesters. This is no justification, mind you, just an observation of factors contributing to the mass protests that we are seeing. 7, protest and the right to protest are fundamental to democracy. 8, riot is not protest. Looting is not protest. We have no right to riot or to loot, and indeed rioting and looting are anathema to democracy. 9, Trump is correct that Antifa is inciting violence, and that violence is counterproductive to having a peaceable society. 10, white nationalists may also be involved in inciting violence on American streets right now, and Trump has in the past engaged in dog whistles to white nationalists. Furthermore, Trump's explicit mention of the Second Amendment in his mostly scripted June 1st press conference can easily be interpreted as a call to arms. He said, quote, "I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights." End quote. What is the Second Amendment doing in that sentence in particular? Is it a call to civil war? If this is what it is beyond anti-patriotic. It may even be treason. 11, some cops are racist thugs. Some dentists are also racist thugs. No society should allow racist thugs to rise to positions of power. Racist thugs who are policemen, given their job, are able to do more damage to others than are racist thugs who are dentists or grocery clerks, garbage men, or electricians. Point 12, most cops are not racist thugs. Most cops, like most dentists and grocery clerks and garbage men and electricians, are honest people with an interest in doing good. 13. Spreading blanket pronouncements of the uniform evil of some demographic, such as with the acronym ACAB, all cops are bastards, or promoting the inherent and unresolvable racism of all white people, is not just untrue, but bad for the cause that it is supposedly for. Force good and honest people to take loyalty oaths, or make an admission of original sin where none exists, and some of those good and honest people will become less good and less honest. Others will wake up to the hypocrisy at the core of a movement that was supposed to do good, and wonder where to turn. Finally, young Americans are in debt. Their educations have failed them. Good healthcare is a distant memory. The prospect of owning a house is a pipe dream for most. Many of the younger among us were raised on legal pharmaceuticals that have rendered us psychologically disorganized, unable to track or control their own emotional states or to read that of others. And our economy has become obsessed with making us into consumers. But consumption does not provide meaning. We will find true meaning in different ways. Some of us will be driven to create. Some will be driven to discover. Some will be driven to heal, others to communicate or to build or to grow or to synthesize. Some will find meaning in the protesting of actual injustice, in the righting of wrongs. There are so many sources of meaning to be had. Instead, we are being controlled and corralled, sold to and lied to and divided. Are humans deeply tribal and competitive? Yeah. Are humans deeply collaborative? Yes. Let us recognize our shared humanity and celebrate our individual differences. We can do both. We can both recognize our shared humanity and celebrate our individual differences, and the best leaders facilitate us doing just that.
Wow. I have a great joke, but I can't deliver it because that was a very sober and nuanced presentation. So I'm going to resist the urge to make light of it.
You're going to save the joke?
No, I'm saving the joke. I will, if I have to organize a podcast to justify that joke delivered at the end as a punchline at some other point, I will do it. But at the moment, you
want to respond en masse or go back to your individual points?
Well,
How would you like to take it?
There's one point in the interest of fairness and clarity that I want to, I don't want to say correct because I think what you said is technically right, but having tripped this wire last night on Twitter, I am sensitive to the hazard it implies. I have as yet seen very little evidence of white nationalists active at this moment in this protest.
I have seen no evidence.
Okay.
But many, and in fact, the thing that I left out here, people are saying, is it Antifa getting in the way of legitimate protesters? Is it, and doing the rioting and looting and inciting violence? Is it white nationalists? Is it foreign countries? Right? All of these are out there as hypotheses, and at some level, the fact is it's divisive.
Right. So all I want to do is make sure that we do not leave the impression that there is evidence for something for which we do not have evidence. Mm-hmm. So I've seen lots of stuff that suggests there is unnatural behavior. I don't know if these pallets of bricks that show up. I had another conversation with a business owner today who's having trouble sourcing bricks. Something odd might be going on or not. We don't know. But all I want to say is there is no question in my mind that what is taking place serves those very divisions and may in fact lead to, my biggest fear is something like a race war that turns into a civil war. But as yet, I have not seen the misbehavior that I might expect on the white nationalist side. So make of it what you will. Mm-hmm.